Well, hello and welcome to our live program. I'm Jeff Gould, America's Storyteller. We have a lot of things to talk about. There are 7 chapters in this program. We're going to be talking about coffee beans, the best prison movies ever, 2 genius ideas for you to choose between. We'll go behind the curtain with how you can get your house through winter weather. We have our genius Duane Bickett in the wings to help us with that. We're also going to talk about this question: if you could be a virtuoso in one language or one instrument, what would you pick? And we're going to talk about the movie that came across my feed, The Good House. Interesting perspective. I want you to hear about that. And of course, we'll get a chance to go to the mailbag as well. So, 7 chapters in the book. And let's go right into chapter 1, The Coffee Bean. I was at a tourism conference last week. We heard a speaker. Sometimes speakers, this guy was extremely gifted. His name was Damon West. His story is phenomenal in that he went from the peaks to a very, very deep valley that you'd think nobody could get out of. And he made it out of the valley because of a coffee bean. So, what do I mean by that? Well, what did he mean by that? Well, he grew up in a good family. He was an athlete in Texas. He succeeded in football, became injured, went down a path of despondency, maybe got hooked on some drugs, got into the stock market business, was sleepy. Somebody said, "Hey, you should try this glass pipe of methamphetamine," became an instant addict. And in 18 months, he had robbed so many houses in Dallas that when they finally caught him, they were sick and tired of him. And they threw the book at him, like $1.4 million dollars in a bail bond. They put him up on organized crime. And when he was sentenced and was found guilty, that meant life imprisonment and a maximum security prison in Texas. Oh my goodness. Well, you get sentenced like in the movies. I didn't know this. Your parents get one last chance. And the parents wheeling across the way, and the mom says this: "Now, listen to me. After you pay your debt to society, you owe us." And she said, "We did not raise you to be a racist. You will not join any gangs. You will not get any tattoos. Do you understand me?" He said, "Yes, mom." He promises, and off he goes to jail with 9,000 other inmates. Well, think about that small city waiting for 2 months until he gets to his final destination, a maximum security prison. Now, can you imagine never having gone to jail and finding out that you will go to a maximum security prison? So he's asking for all kinds of information. What am I going to do to survive? Are the movies as bad as they look? And the answer is yes. Yes, they are as bad as it looks. You will get forced to join a gang. You will get beaten. It's every bit as bad as you think it is. One guy who just happens to walk by, his name is Muhammad, gives him a ray of hope. He says, "No, no, you don't have to get a tattoo. You don't have to join a gang, but it's a little bit of a journey." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, here's what's going to happen. They're going to walk you into that big cell, and you're going to want to run. Don't run. Just stand there and wait. And a small guy is going to come up because you're white. That guy is going to be with the white gangs. There's 4 of them. He's going to be the informer. You need to get rid of that guy right away because the next guy who comes is the enforcer. And that guy is going to, well, here's what you need to do: punch him in the mouth as hard as you can, as soon as you can. And then what? Well, you'll get beaten up by him and then by all the other guys in that gang. And then they're going to give it to the other white gang. And after all the 4 white gangs are done, then they'll say to the black gangs, "Okay, it's your turn." And you'll work your way through all the ethnic gangs, probably about 25 fights. You'll lose all of them. Don't worry. You just have to show up for the fight. If you show up, you can emerge as your own person, not joining a gang, and possibly no tattoos. And then all of a sudden over the PA, "All right, moves prisoners to cell 4," right, as they're going to take the bus and go to maximum security. The guy says, "Be a coffee bean." What? Okay, you're going to go into boiling water, Muhammad says. If you go in as a carrot, hard, you'll turn soft in a hurry. If you go in as an egg, you will become hard boiled and you will lose your soul. But if you become a coffee bean, well, what's a coffee bean? Well, coffee bean changes the water. Be a coffee bean, and then the door slam and away he goes. Well, my goodness gracious. And when you hear a guy like this tell a story to a group of people, you're like going, "What is going on?" And I listened to the whole story, his story of redemption, how he got out of there in 7 years. Okay, he's in for life. His roommate says, "Listen, the only way you can get out of here is if you avoid becoming hard boiled, and that means you have to see this as an opportunity." Okay. Everything in life is an opportunity, even a maximum security prison in the hardest core section of the maximum security prison where all the lifers are. Well, what's going to be my opportunity? I don't know, but it's you have to figure it out and you have to serve in that opportunity. So what this guy does, he decides that he's a college educated guy. He decides that he will serve by teaching people language, teaching people stuff they didn't learn in school because many of them didn't go to school. He teaches them how to read and write, and so he starts to change his surroundings. He starts to be the coffee bean. He changes the whole atmosphere of that cell of hardcore criminals, so much so that in 7 years, they open up the doors and they say, "Okay, we are now going to let you leave and go on parole," which he does for the rest of his life. This guy here we're talking about, Damon West, I'm going to put somewhere around 50 years old. So he's been out of prison for about 9 years and he still is on parole. He will be on parole for a total of 78 years. Okay, so when you hear a story like that with a story arc, that's just why this book, The Coffee Bean, has been such a big seller because who has a story like that? Here is my one takeaway from that. Actually, a couple. What is your excuse? What's my excuse? I mean, talk about talk about controversy, talk about obstacles. If you're afraid of rolling out of bed in the morning, as sometimes we all are, imagine being in a cell full of lifers with no support. Imagine being that kind of fear based in your life. And then imagine how he could serve, and then how he was able to serve, and then how could you serve? Hmm. Well, here's what he did that I thought was a great takeaway. He said, "Stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself. Stop listening to yourself, start talking to yourself." I think the reason that prison movies are so popular is because all of us, many of us, are in some sort of prison. And whether we put ourselves there or other people did, I think that's why prison movies are so popular because of the metaphor. So as you hit the floor with your feet today in your cell, look at yourself in the prison mirror and say, "Today I will serve." And that will be your chance to be a coffee bean. All right, that's chapter one. Now we move to chapter two. Let's bring in our friend, Duane Bickett. Duane Bickett. Bickett. I don't know. Duane Bickett. Bickett Construction. Was that a Freudian slip? There's not a racial bone in your body, is there, Duane? You are a man of the
I
men.
don't. I hope not.
Okay. So here's my question for you. What's your favorite prison movie? Do you have one?
Well, as you were talking, Shawshank Redemption's automatic. I mean, everybody says that. But, however, this probably dates me a little bit. There was a movie that Burt Reynolds was in. It was called The Longest Yard.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it was a prison movie where they had to organize the inmates and they were going to play against the guards. And they said, all this was just a really good opportunity for the um, guards to just really, really, really beat up on the inmates. But what they didn't know is these guys, kind of took it seriously, and it didn't hurt too that there were a few famous NFL players that happened to be in prison as far as this movie went.
And
And
I think
you
that
know, it was the ins and outs and the ups and downs, and it was, it was enjoyable. There you go.
and,
Was it true?
and
Yeah,
if I
probably
remember,
not.
Burt Reynolds is the quarterback, right? And he is
Yes.
in jail for whatever reason. And yeah, he gets a chance, if I remember right, to either sell out so the prison guards can win the game or just go down guns blazing with his prison buddies. Right. I won't give it away. It's a good
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. If you can still find it, I suppose you probably can on one of the streaming services.
Well, I think when you're looking at right there, that is what's called a DVD or maybe even a Betamax. I don't know. Uh,
Oh,
So how about
well, it
this one?
says,
How about this movie? Cool Hand Luke.
is that a prison movie?
Oh, Cool Hand Luke. Oh my goodness gracious. I can eat 50 eggs. I mean, we're talking about Paul Newman. We're talking about George
Yeah.
Kennedy, who got an Oscar nomination, I think, and maybe an Oscar award, Best Supporting Actor in that. We have Struther. What's his name? Struther.
Strother
And
Martin.
yes, what we have here is a failure to
To
communicate.
communicate.
But you know what this Damon West guy said? The most accurate prison movie was Shawshank Redemption. Oh, there's Cool Hand Luke right there. Here it
There's
is.
Cool Hand Luke.
What we got here is a failure to communicate. I want to say that's probably like makes it on the top movie quotes, like top 100 movie quotes. The last I saw was like number 12 on the list. Huh. Um, yeah, Shawshank Redemption is the movie that he said was, and he said who is being redeemed in that movie is not the character of Andy Dufresne, it's Red, the guy who is the Morgan Freeman. Yes, Morgan Freeman is the
Hmm.
guy who's being redeemed, and the reason that he said he liked this movie and thought it was the most realistic was it was about that quote of hope. And if you remember in this movie, and almost everybody's seen it, it's an iconic, it's a great movie. The only thing people don't like about it, and they never did like about, was the name. Nobody liked the name of that movie, but nobody could think of a better name than that name. And I think that's fairly accurate. Anyway, Morgan Freeman's talking to Tim Robbins and said, "Listen, you can't hope here. It'll kill you. You hope will kill you on the inside." And then this is when Andy Dufresne says, "We either got to get busy living or get busy dying."
Be busy
Well,
dying.
what what I didn't know was that I should go watch this movie again. The last minute of the movie, Morgan Freeman's character says something like this: "I hope I'm able to shake my friend's hand again. I hope that the ocean is as blue as I dream it is. I hope." So he is saved because he is able to hope, and that is why this Damon West guy said that is the most realistic prison movie, because that is really the issue, is fighting against hope. Hmm. Well,
And maybe just on a side note to that, because when we have live conversations, just the two of us, we never stay on any kind of a topic. I heard this morning on the radio that they had video of the first ever coyote, or depending on where you live, coyote. Around here, we call them coyotes. The first coyote that ever swam to Alcatraz. And they saw him struggling because, they got the undertow and the rip currents and all that kind of stuff that's in San Francisco Bay. But they said the coyote finally drug himself on the shore. He was shivering, he was cold. And I'm sure he looked around and said, now what?
have you been
Because
to
there's probably not
Alcatraz?
a lot of, have I? No, no.
I have. It's it's a fascinating tour. I think they closed the, well, I know they closed the prison down, and it's been left to the elements, and it's in the sea area,
Hmm.
so it's just a rusty hulk. It'd be a great place to shoot some sort of post-apocalyptic movie because it just is run down. But in that, you can see San Francisco. And this is what the inmates said was the most torturous thing about it, was because you could see it, and depending on the night, you could hear it. So while you were in your cell on Alcatraz, many of them for life, you could hear people laughing, you could hear life going on, and it was often to the distance. And they said that was brutal. They gave you like headphones and cassette tape, so it's a while ago, and you'd punch up a tour, and you'd say, well, now you're in this room, and there would be inmates there, or who were people who were inmates, tell their story of being in Alcatraz. And sometimes you go these tours and you want to pay $10 for this. You say, if you go to Alcatraz, yes, definitely do the tape tour. It was, I mean, if you wanted to, I could tell you all the stories, because once somebody tells me a story, I never forget it. I'll tell you one real quick. When you're in the hole and they shut off all the lights, you're there and it's punishment. And I think they called it the hole. And two inmates talked about what they would do. One guy said he'd take a button off of his prison uniform and he'd be in the dark and he'd throw it behind him over his shoulder. And it's pitch dark, so he'd feel around with his hands until he found it. And then he'd do it again. And he'd do it again. And that's how he passed time in the hole. Huh. There it is. 8 things to know about Alcatraz prison. Oh, and AIM. AIM was there. The American Indian movement took over
Yeah.
Alcatraz. And there's much of their graffiti that still stands in that place. Okay. The other story was a guy, he'd say he'd stare into the darkness. And as he focused into the darkness, a tiny television screen would appear in front of him. And then you just watch it, it would go bigger and bigger. And then he'd watch that little TV, which is basically his mind, right? A guy said, so I'm in the hole or in there, and I'm there. It's been 7 years since I've seen a girl. And the warden lived there, and he had his family there, and he happened to just look out a window, and there he saw this teenage girl just walking across the compound. And then he said this. He said, you know, imagine if you'd never seen a girl for 7 years, and then you just saw her walking across a lot. Now, that's all he said. But the way he said it, he just went, huh. Anyway, Alcatraz. All right. We done for chapter 2? Let's go. Chapter 3. Now, this is where our listeners get to vote. Our viewers get to vote. People get to vote on this. I have 2 genius ideas. Now, Duane, I don't have to put you on the spot tonight, but there'll be opportunities for you to bring your genius ideas. I have 2
You
genius
specialize
ideas.
in putting me on the spot.
I will present these genius ideas. You will have a vote. Our listeners will have a vote. And then Booker at the end of the show will tell me which genius idea will survive the evening. Are you ready? Okay.
Ready.
Here's our first genius idea. So in my life, you go and you have coffee, which is a hot cup of coffee. That's what coffee's supposed to do. It's supposed to be hot. And then a couple of years ago, people started introducing ice brewed coffee, or they purposefully made it cold, served it on ice. That sounds absolutely horrible, but people tell me that they like it. Have you ever had ice brewed coffee, Duane?
No.
Okay.
I haven't had a cup of coffee in probably 45 years.
Wait a minute. Stop this. You haven't had a cup of coffee in 45 years? Wow.
Mm-mm.
Wow. Well, I'm keeping you in the loop. Between the two of us, we have several cups of coffee a day. This is my genius idea. It's called warm brewed coffee. Coffee that's brewed at room temperature, served at room temperature. It's called room brewed coffee. You never have to worry about it getting a cold because it's supposed to be the temperature of the room. We get somebody famous, some country act like Luke Bryan, right? We call it Luke warm coffee. He kind of endorses it. You serve it, you don't have to worry about it spilling on your lap and getting a burn. You don't have to worry about it getting out of the temperature because whatever the temperature of the room is, that is the temperature of the coffee. And we call it warm brewed coffee. Genius idea number one. Genius idea number two, never ready batteries. So if you have little kids in the house, grandkids, little kids, and they get something for Christmas or a birthday, almost invariably it makes a lot of noise. And it's going to make noise as long as those batteries are in existence. So this idea, this genius idea, we release batteries that are almost dead out of the gate, 5% power. They will die in 5 minutes. So your kid gets this super horn blowing concoction. You put the batteries in, 5 minutes later, brrr, runs out of batteries. Your kid says, "What's going on?" You say, "Sorry, honey. Sorry, kiddo. Looks like the batteries are dead." Oh, but maybe tomorrow we can go get some more. Huh? So it's purposely designed to die early. The never ready battery. That's my second genius idea. Okay, we're gonna get votes. We're gonna find these at the end of the show. Dwayne, out of the gate, I guess you don't even like coffee, so you're not even gonna vote for that one. What's your vote?
I like the battery one because I was pressed into service to assemble a Tonka excavator that had some of the most annoying sounds to it. But the bucket operated and the arm operated, and to a 3-year-old, that was kind of cool anyway. So to this day, we have no idea what sound the excavator makes because I don't know how to do it.
Is that
And
because
so
it's out
far,
of
I've
battery?
been able to sell that idea.
Okay,
So you make your own motor noise.
that's what we used to do when I was a kid. I would tell people that you used to get some. I don't know who thought of this, but it became everywhere. You'd get these baseball cards, and then you'd take clips and you'd clip them in the spokes of your bike, and it'd go around and make this whappy whappy sound. And every kid did that. I mean, it's the
Hmm.
dumbest idea. Did it really sound like a motorcycle? No. Did it ruin your baseball cards?
No.
Absolutely. Did your mom get mad because you stole her clothespins? Absolutely. But what did
Close.
you do anyway? You did all of those things because somehow that was
Yep.
cool to put these cards in. And I'm told that card collectors, they love that trend because that's what makes cards so valuable, because almost every card was ruined by that mechanism.
Yep.
True? Yeah. All right. Now, here we go. Chapter 4, and this is where you shine. Dwayne, you are the man. We are in a little bit of a cold snap at this time, and it's nationwide. Many people are struggling, and nobody hears more about this than guy. Where did we get that picture?
I have no idea where that came from.
So,
I don't
Dwayne,
have drapes in my house.
let's go behind the curtain. And Dwayne, as a builder, help us out with what you see. Give us ideas, give us tips, help us through the cold weather snap. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, one of the most common, and whether it's a new house, old house, existing house, it could be a brand new house you just moved into. Let's say this summer, you call and you say, I don't know what's wrong with these windows. These are the worst windows I've ever seen. They're wet on the bottom. It feels like the cold's coming in. The windier it gets, the worse it gets. They either didn't get insulated, they didn't get put in right, or they didn't get all these kind of things. Well, mo- I guess that could be true, but more than likely, the problem is new house construction or a very extensive home remodeling that involves new windows, doors, and a bunch of other work loads a ton of moisture into a house from the drywall work to the painting. Everything that you bring in there has moisture involved, and it takes a while for a house to condition itself, because if you don't have either a dehumidifier or a good air conditioning system, in my house I've got both, then you're going to have a lot of moisture. Well, when it comes around to wintertime, you're saying, well, they're saying that we got to, maintain the moisture in the house because of the wood floors, and because of everything that's in that new house. And we want to make sure we're doing this right. So instead of, saying that the natural airflow, whether it be hot water heat, regular hot air heat, which is, I guess it'd be hot air heat is like a hot water heater. But while you're doing all this, it has a tendency to keep the moisture level probably abnormally high, at least for the first year. And where that really shows up is on windows, and especially on glass, and large expanses of glass show it the most. But the warm, moist air from the inside will go out and seek the glass, because that's where the cold is. So when that warm, moist air hits that cold glass, it's going to run down to the bottom, either form a little bit of moisture, a little bit of, and I've seen where it's actually run water off of them, or on really cold mornings like the last 4 or 5 days, you might even have a little bit of ice on there.
Hmm.
The other thing that happens is you've got these enormous windows in your family room, living room, great room, wherever you're sitting. Maybe you have a west exposure or north exposure, and you say, we can't even sit close to these windows because they're so cold. Well, the window's not leaking. The window is of quality if you paid for quality windows. They were more likely installed right. What you're experiencing at that point is going to be cold wash. And what cold wash is when the glass, the large glass area, when the heat starts to cool off, you pump the heat up, it always goes to the ceiling and starts to fall. Well, as it falls across that glass, and that air actually gets colder as it gets closer to the floor. And it's called cold wash. And the remedy for that is airflow, maintain the right humidity. In the wintertime, you should have about 35% to keep your wood floors from cracking, your cabinets from separating, your trim from, blowing the joints apart, that kind of thing.
I
And the
probably
other
got
thing is
10%.
either, yeah, yeah, that'll do it. You won't have any no moisture on your windows at all. Your wood flooring is going to erupt off the floor, but it's going to stay nice and dry. But the other thing is, if and this is hard for some people to do, and I know it's hard for me to do because I live in the country, so I don't need a lot of curtains. But a good heavy set of curtains will not stop the cold wash, it just contains it inside. So if you're sitting next to that window, you're not going to be as susceptible to it. Or as I noticed, as I occasionally peruse through TikTok when I'm bored, they make a monkey um, snuggle blanket that's actually, you crawl inside and stick your feet and your arms through the monkey arms. It's made for all ages. And there was some pretty large people that were dressed up like monkeys, and they got their little monkey hat on. And you could sit in front of anyone. You could sit out on the porch with that. So that would be the solve of that. So
So
watch
I've
your moisture and keep the air moving.
so air exchangers, some new construction, depending on where you're at, said you need an air exchanger, which is basically a vent that comes into your house and it crisscrosses with all these kind of tubes and mechanisms. So as it goes through, the air, the warmth gets transmitted into the house, and so you're getting rid of the bad moist air, but you're not hopefully getting rid of all of the heat. Not like just opening a window, right? That'd be, but so it's called a air exchanger, I believe, and it's a code for some places in new construction. What do you know, and what do you think about air exchangers?
If depending on the degree of your um, envelope, which is the house structure, the insulation value, how the walls are built, how the ceilings put together, it's never a bad idea, because inside air is way more polluted than outdoor air. Because I've had people say, "Hey, I'm going to go out for fresh air," and we go, "Well, it's 22 below zero," and they come in about a minute and a half later and go, "Yep, got all the fresh air I need." So the air-to-air heat exchanger will keep the air a lot cleaner and a lot fresher. You want to go a step further, it's a whole house ventilation system where it will pick up. It basically acts as a whole house exhaust fan for the kitchen, for the bathrooms, and for all those kind of things. So
And
it's
does it
never a
do a good
bad
job of
idea.
does it do a good job of keeping the heat or keeping the cold, or is it like, "Oh my goodness, I'm just flushing all this energy outside?"
No, it does make a difference, and
Mm.
and I guess the other thing is it does 2 things. Number 1, it keeps the house more comfortable. It expels a lot of the bad air, and, I can't say that, well, you're never gonna get a cold, you're never gonna get sick or all that kind of thing, but the air does get turned over a lot more than a house that is completely locked down for the wintertime. So, grandma always said that if you sleep with an open window, you'll never get sick unless you die of, hypothermia. So, the older houses didn't have any trouble breathing because they breathed very well. It's just the newer ones now that, I know we built a house one time and we were very meticulous because that's what the homeowner was looking for. And I said, we can tighten this thing up so it doesn't breathe at all. Well, they called me one day and said there's an icicle hanging from the lock knob of our front doorknob. And I said, it has to. That's the only place that house is breathing is through that little bitty keyhole. And as it came through, the moisture was condensating and it was forming an icicle. And I said, your house is way too tight now. So
So
yeah, there, and there's a lot of science to building that people sometimes don't look at when they're looking at pretty. And I've had a problem with buying on the basis of pretty for a long time.
well, my house is 130 years old, and I heard somebody talk about this as a metaphor. By the way, I have 28 air exchangers. They're called windows. So, anyway, he said, "Jeff, if you got an old house, it's like wearing a sweater. It breathes through everything, and that's how you should think about this house. A modern house is kind of like a raincoat, which is both great because it keeps the heat in, but if you ever worn a raincoat, you get sweaty in a hurry. And the problem with that is you have to figure out how you're going to get that moisture out, because when you get moisture, you're going to have trouble with rot and mildews and molds and things like that. So
Hmm.
when he told me that, it made me kind of like the old sweater I have, because it gets rid of a lot of moisture just by being an old house. And then what happens is these new technologies go how we can button this house up nice and tight, and then nobody kicks the can 5 years, 10 years down the road and says, we overdid this.
And that's why air-to-air heat exchangers were invented
Mm.
because of that very fact right there.
Okay, final question on this. Because I've seen a lot of different heating systems. My grandfather, who sold electricity, for gosh sakes, sold electric roof heaters, back in the 50s. He might be the only guy because they were super expensive. And there's been the baseboard electric, and there's been boilers. Well, for one time in my life, I had a municipal hot water system. The little town I lived in took waste water from the downtown plant and filtered it through the entire downtown, including my house, and went into boilers. It was kind of a cool system. I've seen forced air. Now I've seen these, like, it looks like a big garden hose that you kind of loop around through the floor of the house, and you pour concrete or something on it, and then it heats up from the basement. I see that, Dwayne, I see that, and I just go, "Oh my goodness, what happens if somebody pokes a hole in that hose somewhere?" But you're the guy, you know all the different kinds of heating. Tell me what your thoughts are about, the tried and true, the new stuff. Where are you at on heating systems?
Well, I live in a home that is in the rural area. We live west of Sioux Falls. So we're all electric. We've got an electric heat pump, and everybody for years has debated, oh God, putting a heat pump is going to cost you, cost you, cost you, cost you. I don't believe that. And I've proven that I don't believe that because there's two things. Number one, buy good windows. pay attention to your envelope, which is the outside structure. Make sure everything's wrapped, make sure everything's insulated, make sure your windows are tight, make sure of all these things. And then you don't have to pray that it's not going to get cold, because it's going to get cold. But you can see on our thermostat that if the weather gets extremely cold for a long time, it'll show on our thermostat, instead of saying heat, it'll say emergency heat. And what happens with a heat pump is the main condenser, that is both the heater and the air conditioner, sits outside. And inside your furnace, there's actually heating coils. So when it gets extremely cold, and even 20-degree air has heat in it, it's warmer than 19-degree air. So that's the whole principle. That's a real quick explanation of a heat pump. But it can still pull some heat out of the air until it gets extremely cold. And then the heat panels kick in. And the good part about that is you get a discounted rate for your heat, your air conditioning, and all those kind of things in this system. And I'm going to give Sioux Valley Energy a plug, because they do an outstanding job for anybody that's out in the country. But the other thing that we were very fortunate with is I'm surrounded by trees, and two big cottonwood trees in our backyard. I figure they saved me about $150 a month in air conditioning, because by noon, my entire roof, which is the largest heat gathering mechanism you've got in your whole house, is completely in the shade. So, a heat pump, I used to be skeptical of them. I'm a very big proponent of it. Then you go to ground source heat pumps, where you actually you put the coils in the ground, and you pull the heat out of the water that's under the ground, and also the heat of the earth. One of the most unique systems I've ever seen that works really well is out in Rapid City. We were working on a house that had no heat ducts, no electric heat. It was all in the ceiling, and it was a foil that was stapled to the bottom of the ceiling joist that had coils in it, wire coils, and it heated the ceiling, and then it radiated down, and it works great until you decide you want to remodel. Because if you cut one piece of ceiling in the wrong spot, all of a sudden you got a heat problem, or you have a no heat problem, let's put it that way. But the other thing is, they always said, Rapid City's got such a temperate climate, you probably won't need an air conditioner. Yeah, it's 106 degrees in Rapid City too. You need an air conditioner. But that's the thing with, that split system, or, if you're going to go with in-floor heat, which you were talking about, where you run the pipes through the concrete, great heat. But you still need an air conditioning system, which at that point you either put under the floor in the concrete. Most of those houses don't have basements, they're slab on grade. The only problem is you got to make sure you're not in a flood zone, because if the water table comes up, you're pumping water along with your air. So most of those go through the attic as far as the air conditioning goes. But there's so many different styles and types and things. And the one thing we don't see a lot of anymore, at least in residential, is boiler systems, just because they're expensive and they work great. It's a great set, it's great heat, but there's a lot of systems within that boiler system too, whether it be steam or hot water.
Well, water has heat,
Contact your
liquid.
local representative.
Uh, uh, Absolutely. Contact your local construction guy. Can we scroll your number across the bottom here, Dwayne? So I remember the last time I looked at a heat pump, and you're talking about what Dwayne has. It pumps the heat out of air, and so obviously gas has less energy than water or solids do. So the other thing he was talking about is you run these big, huge hoses down into the earth, and you kind of cut yourself a big, radiator sort of into your yard. And then I know this from my funeral experience. You go down about 6 feet, and everything's 59 degrees year round. So, don't ask me why I know that, but it's true. So, if you can get down to that level, you're only really paying for the cost of pumping a liquid. So, you're just paying for a motor. And then in the coolness, it's going to make your house, 58 degrees, which is plenty cool for most people. And then there's so much energy in that liquid that to pump the heat out of 58 degrees and bring it down to 56 degrees. That's plenty to heat your house up to a toasty whatever. But the payback on that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 years, which means that if you bought it today and you stayed in that house, in 20 years, it'd be like a money machine printing money. But
Mhm.
most people would say, well, if I just bought the cheaper one and put the difference in the bank, then look at how well off I'd be. I feel like that sort of system would be perfect for municipal or state buildings, which have a longer time horizon. Those buildings are going to be big, they're going to take a lot of heat. If I was doing something to help out the federal government, we need to spend money today to save it down the road. I would look heavily at heat pumps, but that's all I got on heat pumps. Any final thoughts on that topic?
Well, we did a house like that that was, by the time we got it all done, it was a remodeling project, and by the time we got it all done, it was about 7,200 square feet total, basement plus two upper levels, and it had a ground source heat pump, and we had, because it was out in the country, we got the 100-gallon plastic last forever water heaters. They never, the only thing they used those water heaters for was hot water storage. They never turned them on because that ground source heat pump generated so much hot water that they could take a shower for 4 or 5 or 6 days with everybody they knew, bring over the football team, anybody else want to take a shower. They could never, ever, ever run that system out of hot water, winter or summer. So there you've got, the savings of, you don't need an electric water heater or gas fired water heater. All you're doing is storing the hot water you've already manufactured. So, that factors into the payback and that kind of thing too.
Well, so you know how when you go to meet a doctor at a party, you start asking him for advice. Same thing when Dwayne goes to parties, people start asking him for advice. He's not going to go to your party unless you ask him, but he's probably not going to go to your party. But you have a question or comment, or you're somebody else in the trades and say, well, don't forget about this and this. Put that down in the comment section. We'll visit that down the road. And if you have a question or you want to vet your own doctor to see if they're telling you the truth, the doctor not being a doctor, but another guy in the trades. That's also welcome. And for that, let's move on to our next chapter. Chapter 5. All right, Dwayne, this is for you. You are now a virtuoso. You can pick a language or you can pick an instrument. There you go. Look at that. You can pick a language or an instrument, and you can deliver that language. Let's just say you can even sing in that language. I like this graphic. Tell me the language or tell me the instrument and why you selected that.
I've kind of, and I've, talked to people, and especially small children that have to take music lessons. And both of my kids played in the marching band. They were both brass instruments. One played the trumpet, the other one played the trombone. Now my grandkids are playing the trumpet and the trombone, which is kind of cool. Not the same one, because that wouldn't be cool to be playing your mom's trombone. But um, I always thought that now that I'm older and I don't have to do it, playing the piano would be kind of fun.
I mean, so you
And I'm
could,
not gonna try to be Billy Joel or anything.
here's what you like about your selection as a piano. Pianos are everywhere. They're in hotel lobbies, and you could just kind of pull this out. You could kind of walk by and say, well, it's been a while. And then you could sit down. I mean, Dwayne, and because you're a virtuoso, it could be boogie woogie, it could be jazz, it could be concert, it could
Hmm.
be whatever. And you would just be all off the top. Oh, man. I mean, who doesn't just stop and go, what? I didn't know you played the piano. Oh, well, it's just a little something I picked up, right? That's nice.
Piano savant.
I would like to say, I can't decide if it's going to be Italian because who wouldn't like to be able to throw down just volumes of Italian or French, these romantic languages, or 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 um or Chinese. what's the province? What's the main language of the Chinese? It's the Han. It's
Mandarin.
Mandarin. Yes. And the reason I think that would be funny is because nobody would expect me to speak fluent Mandarin. So to be kind of hanging out in a section of town where some immigrants are chattering away in Mandarin, and just to go in and go, you know, I can't even imitate the imitation. I just think to do that just for the shocked double take of what? And then the best part, I think, would be just to sort of listen to their gossip in that language as they're talking about other people in the restaurant. And then after at the end of the meal, go, oh, and by the way, and that would just be, that'd be hilarious. So because you took
Hmm.
piano, which I would take first, I will take I will take Mandarin Chinese. Mandarin Chinese for 400, Alex. All right. All right. Chapter 6. So here we go. This came into my movie feed for the last week, and it is called The Good House, and it's with Sigourney Weaver and Kevin Kline. And I think Booker has pulled up the trailer for us, and let's see if we can watch that. Okay, Booker? Here
My family's lived in Wendover for almost 300 years. We have the beaches and the breezes and the best damn views on the North Shore of Boston.
It's so beautiful.
Frank, I've been calling you for days. There's a lawyer from Boston who's very interested in your waterfront lot. Do you ever answer your phone?
No.
I was the top broker on the North Shore, and if everything had gone according to plan, I'd be fine. That's not what happened.
Hildy, would you like to have a seat?
Well, if we're really going to do this, I need a drink.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding. My daughters would freak if they could see me right now.
Don't they want you to be happy?
My ex-husband left me for a man, and I went to rehab.
A gay husband will do that to you.
Cheers to that.
Mom, do you think I'm excited to ask you for money?
No, I'm sure it's very hard. Rents, mortgages, tuitions. I need a good year. What? I know it looks bad, but in my mind, wine is not really drinking. Vodka definitely is.
Hey, Hilly.
Oh, Frank, you were spying on me.
I came here for some peace and quiet.
Uh-huh.
Instead, I got an eyeful.
There was a time in my life I was quite in love with Frankie Getchell.
Hit as a button.
You would have been too. All my friends were. You want to come over for dinner?
Dinner.
It's this meal people eat at the end of the day. It's pretty popular.
Sure.
Wish your mom had been around to play with us when we were little.
My mom didn't do this stuff.
Right, the good old days.
Are you dating Frank Getchell? What if I was?
Really throwing me off.
Ew.
It's okay to be angry and scared. It's okay to ask for help.
I'm tired of sweeping everything under the rug.
I didn't realize I was doing that. I feel like myself with you. Usually I only feel like myself when I have a drink in my hand.
Do what you need to do, Hildy. I'm not going anywhere.
My girls really like you.
They're good girls.
I was talking about my dogs.
Okay. All right. Boy, I hated that trailer. Wow. I would never see that movie based on that trailer. I'm watching this trailer thinking they're going to come in right now and take away my man card. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now why you should watch this movie. And I don't even know if you should now that you see the trailer, but it's better than the trailer makes it out to be, because here's what it is. Sigourney Weaver plays a kind of a queen bee real estate agent, kind of the north of Boston, upper crust. And she is a doer. She's got a couple of needy daughters, and she's kind of keeping the whole thing together, paying the bills, a lot of ne'er-do-wells. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they say, Mom, you got to sit down because we think you have a drinking problem. And you, as the person who's watching the movie, say, what are you talking about? I'm not seeing any of this. And you are with her as she's going like, what, just because at the end of the day, I have some wine, which, so you are every bit as shocked as she is, because it seems like she's the one who's keeping this whole thing together. And it's only after the movie plays out a while that you realize, oh, she does have a drinking problem. I just haven't seen that before. And so the reason I would suggest watching this movie is that if you know somebody who is struggling with any kind of addictions, this movie does a great job of showing you how they feel about it, because she has no idea that she has a drinking problem. And you, as a viewer, you don't get that either. And it just comes across in a really interesting way. If you know somebody who is an alcoholic, recovering alcoholic, whatever, it's a good movie to watch from that side, and it's much better than the stupid trailer makes it out to be. So that is my, my movie of the week. Dwayne, you're not going to watch that movie.
The way that trailer started, the way that trailer started is I was going to really jump into my monologue about every Hallmark movie I've ever been forced to endure, because you give me 10 minutes and I'll tell you which one of the very devastatingly handsome, very handy gentleman with great hair is going to show up in an old pickup to rescue the gal from New York City that came in to help her grandma's bakery survive.
And then somehow
I can name names and show you pictures.
And somehow, Dwayne, in the earlier scenes, he's going to be in her house using the bathroom, and he's not going to have any shirt on. And she's going to stumble into the bathroom, and you'll see his corrugated abs for about 2 minutes. I'm like, what's this? Well, what can I say? Anyway, yes. So on we move. So I'm going to recommend The Good House with Sigourney Weaver, and I'm not going to say, please do not watch the trailer. Okay. We're now to the section of the show where we are looking back to chapter 3, and we're voting on my genius idea. Which genius idea got the best play from our audience? Warm brewed coffee. That's coffee that's served at room temperature, so it never gets out of its zone. It's always the perfect temperature because it's made to be room temperature. And the other one is the Never Ready battery, which is a battery you give to your kids because they don't last longer than 5 minutes. You plug them into their devices, they quickly wear out, the noise subsides. You're not the bad guy. You're as puzzled as they are. Well, I don't even know what happened. I don't know what happened. It used to make noise, but these batteries must have run out. And you hold the batteries and say, what? And then either you put more batteries in, which also fail, or you say, well, maybe we can get to the store next time, which never happens. Okay. What's the winner of the poll? Let's go to our chat. What do we have? And the winner is Never Ready batteries. All right. Now, what is the purpose of these genius ideas? I'm a person who doesn't have much time anymore. I mean, I could launch an industry, but I have no desire to launch an industry. You, however, my friend, you have the time and ability to take our genius ideas and make millions of dollars with them. All that we will do is go back and look at the tape and say, you probably got that idea from watching this show, and that's fine. You do you, make your millions. On we go. All right. Now, chapter 7. We go to the mailbag. We're going to end the show on that. The mailbag. Oh, there we go. Here is our question from the mailbag. And Dwayne, I'd like you to respond to this. I'm also going to give my response. You respond, I'll wrap up with you. Okay, you ready? And your first is yes. Is now a good time to buy a house?
My thoughts on that is, if you can swing it, if you can afford it, I wouldn't let a little bit higher interest rate dissuade me from doing something that I need, either for my family or for shelter or for whatever reason, because everybody was so locked in because we got this 3% rate, we can't do anything, and we got this 2.5% rate, we can't do anything. Well, we are never, ever, ever going to see that again. And you can write that down in a genius idea. But I don't think in our lifetime we're going to see it drop to that again. However, it's not going to stay where it is. It is going to come down. At that point, between the tariffs, the inflation, the price increases, what we're going to do with lumber, what we're going to do with drywall, what we're going to do with concrete and cement and all these other things, the cost is going to continue every single day. So if you're in a position that you're not going to be, well, and part of that too is personal discipline, where if you can buy without being house poor, because if you got a brand new, nice, gigantic house that doesn't have any furniture in it, you're house poor. But if it's right for your family, if it's the right school, if it's the right time, if it's the right job, if it's the right down payment, yes, absolutely. When the rate goes down, refinance.
Okay. So my brother bought his first house and the interest rate was 18%. My first house I bought at 11.5%, and I had to buy points to get to that. Rule number one, and it has nothing really to do with the housing market, it has to do with you. Never buy a house until you love your job. Never buy a house till you love your job. Why? Well, a house is an instant commitment to pay a mortgage. And if the mortgage comes from your job and your job is something you don't like, you will now feel like you are chained to that job. So when you like your job and you say, now is the time for you to buy a house, because if you don't, a house is going to be an anchor, and it's going to be an anchor around your neck, my opinion. Second to what Duane is talking about, buy what you can afford. This is the old rule of thumb. I think it's quite good. I've applied it and seen it. When you pay a third of your take home goes to your housing, which includes all the energy and stuff to fix the house, right? All of that. When a third of your budget goes to the house, or a quarter of your gross. All right, so just really rough, if you make $4,000 a month and that's your gross, you can spend $1,000. You can afford $1,000 a month. Okay, right. That is a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift these days. What's going out there for that? Well, we know this is the case, that historically houses would cost about 3 times your annual income. So if your family made $100,000 in a year, generally speaking, your houses were about $300,000. And run the tape back, same thing. Now they're about 5 times, and it takes a while for them to adjust. And Duane, you can speak to this, right? Because when the house goes up for sale in a neighborhood, Mr. Smith says, well, the Joneses sold their house 2 years ago for this colossal amount of money. I want to ask for that. And the realtor says, well, nobody's paying that. Well, then I'm just going to take it off the market. I don't need to sell it right now. So it's going to take a while for those housing prices to go down. And if you feel somewhat hopeless, then you feel exactly the way I felt when my brother bought his house at 18% interest. I thought it would never come back, and it did. So live your life, love your job, save your money, work the mechanics, because as Duane can tell you, there is nothing sadder than walking into a wealthy mansion and seeing people sit on lawn chairs with no curtains because they can't even afford the basic furniture. Duane?
Been there, done that. Yeah, I bought my first house in 1980, and it was the South Dakota Housing First Time Buyer Loan. We bought down to 8%, and that's when you could get a CD if you had the money, and you could put your money in CDs in 1980. You were getting about 17.5% on your money, which was crazy, which was great if you had the money to invest, not so good if you were trying to buy a house and feed a family. But I also remember that, every house I bought after that and built after the rate was down. And then we got to about the mid 90s and we got to the first Gulf War, and everybody said, oh, we're going into a massive recession. Nothing's going to move. Nothing's going to happen. We said, you know what? If we could just get that interest rate down to 9%, we'd have more houses to build than we could get done. And then we got down to 3%, and we had more houses to build than we could get done. So it depends on, your cycle of life, your stage of your life, knowing that I don't see a lot of first time buyers in their 60s, but we just had a neighbor, and all of us out here on rural acreages, we just had a neighbor that moved in kind of behind us, and it was land that I bought at an auction because it had housing eligibilities, and I thought this is going to be great. Just before the recession hit in 2008. So anyway, got the house done. Young couple moved in. They decided they want more land. They moved out, and they put it up for what I thought was an enormous amount of money. Well, come to find out, a lot of people looked at it and everybody said, great, it's got a big pole barn, it's got an apartment in the back, it's got a hoist, it's got everything. This couple came out and I thought, well, this has got to be somebody's grandma that's going to look at this house, and they got to bring grandma out and say, hey, what do you think? Well, it ended up that grandma and grandpa bought this house. They're both in their mid 80s, and they're sitting with a driveway that's probably 185 feet long to the road, but found out that he had an extensive career in law enforcement and then translated that into a security business and some other things. So he's got the coolest toys I've ever seen. And his granddaughter has a food truck, so that's in the big shop. They got a food trailer that's in there, but he's got a skid loader, or not a skid loader. He's got a Bobcat tractor that's got a snowblower on it. And I thought, why am I out here freezing to death and he's over there just driving along, drinking his coffee, listening to the radio? So, you never know anymore. You can't judge people by saying, hey, they're dragging 3 little kids in here. There's no way that they can afford this house. Well, maybe they got their money the old fashioned way. They inherited it. You can't really say. And it's hard to, I'm an observer of people, and there are times when you come in and you go, yeah, they're just not going to happen. And then they say, well, here, let me just get my checkbook out. Okay. Here's a pen.
This suitcase only has 25,000. Oh, I got the wrong suitcase. Hang on a second. Okay. All right. We'll tell you what, we're running short on time. In fact, we're out of time. That hour went fast. Duane Bickett is our co-host today. You have any comments? You have any things you'd like to say? Just put it down in the comment section. Reach, comment, like, comment, share, post, do all your social media things, and we'll see you. We'll see you next Monday. God bless. Take care.